Hey everybody, you might have seen me install a couple of pocket door tracks in the rough stage, but I'm going to set a pocket door in this finished opening right here. It has the same hardware that I like using, and I'm going to show you what I do step by step, and including even trimming down a door which is too tall for this particular opening. I need a 79.5-inch door leaf, and it gave me a full height door to set in place. So it's a pre-finished, nice oak veneer door that I don't want to damage the front. So I'm going to cut it down, and we'll see how this fares, because I'm going to cut this door down. So I'll just show you what I have in place already right now. The track is in place. Again, this is the track that I like to use here. I took a roller and just put it in the pocket ahead of time so I could make sure that I could measure from the bottom of the carrier here, bottom of the mounting plate, all the way down to the finished floor, and I deducted 1/2 inch, and that's where I got my height of my door leaf. So that's what I'm setting up for to do next. This track saw is one of my better investments that I've made. It's made my quality of work that I like to maintain a lot easier, mainly because I can just simply throw this guide down on top of some marks that I have. It actually has a cut line already determined. I put it over top of my marks, set it, cut it. It doesn't move around. I cut the door. Both sides of the cut are pristine, and I can only hope it's going to give me the same performance on this door, because this is quite an expensive door that I'm getting ready to cut. So I know I need to have a 79.5-inch door. And I have to cut this critically because it'll affect how the guide works at the bottom. I mean critically, because the guides at the bottom of the door are two tapered edges opposed from each other, and the door runs in between each of these two tapers. So if the door gets taller or shorter, then it has more slop to fit in between there. Sometimes it can get too tight depending on how the adjustments are. So it's imperative that I cut the door evenly. And this guide, that saw, helps that happen. Here's the guides that I was referring to. I love these guides. They can be hidden, and they can be still left adjustable even with the door in place, with the jamb in place. I've seen many people put them on a surface, which I don't like. I've seen them put them behind the jamb, which is, I don't think it's a good idea. Not adjustable until you pull the jamb. But I set them within a saw curve of the door. You'll see that later maybe. But you can see how they're tapered, and they're about 1 inch tall. So with the door about 1/2 inch off the floor, that gives me just enough room to get the gap at the door. And because I'm now seeing how tall these are, I might just go ahead and raise it up to where I have a 5/8 of an inch up off the floor, so it gets into a higher region of this gap, because that right there, with the thickness of that guide right there, will automatically force 1/8 inch gap at the door. And I don't want my gaps at the doors to be more than 1/8 inch. I've seen people set 1/4 inch, which is horrendous. But anyway, sorry for being a little anal, but I just want to make sure this thing looks good when it's in place. So I'm going to remark it. And it really literally should be just as simple as tossing this up on there, setting it exactly on the marks I just created, both of them. And I'm going to do this left-handed. This should be pretty foolproof, because I want to catch the fall off before it pulls itself off the door and possibly pull some veneer loose. So a lot of times these are done on styrofoam, so the fall off is not an issue. But one, I don't like crawling on my hands and knees. Secondly, it's a luxury I don't think I need to worry about right now, but let's just see how this acts. And this is the cut here on the non-protected side. You can actually see that it gives still a very nice cut, even though it doesn't have the guide resting upon it to keep the chips from flaking up. So that can tell me that the other side is going to be pristine for having the guide actually sitting on top of it. So to finish this off, I always ease my corners. on everything that I do on the door bottoms and such, because it's a very hard corner. One, if you open the door on your foot for whatever reason, especially a hinge door, not a pocket door so much, that corner will damage skin. So I always ease them off with my sanding blocks that I keep. And this is one of the better ideas that I was turned on to, using a sanding belt stretched over top of a piece of 3/4 material. And I've seen them done to where they would cut them short and then put a wedge in the end to get the belt to draw tight. I don't like that. I've tried that technique. I thought it was great at the time, but the wedge kept on coming out. So when that happened, I just figured no. So this block's been around for a long time. But my technique is to bevel one edge backwards a little bit, 10 degrees, something like that, so I can get better than a 90-degree corner on my block in case I have to get into a harder corner than 90s, or it's even good for a 90-degree corner. But the other end's also squared. But I stretch it over top of it, and it gives me a nice uniform sanding block. Rather than doing it by hand, you can concentrate too much on one spot and dish it out. Not that it's going to happen quickly, but this just makes the sanding process a lot more uniform across its length. And on the edges, always pull it towards you. Don't do that, because sometimes you can lift the grain. Here I am. Anyway, I have the initial corner already broke, so it's not that big of a deal by sanding on it. But you at least don't want your first licks to be pushing, because I've had that take the veneer off. Now, if this takes that down nice and even, it gives me a lovely edge to work with. And same thing on the other side. That makes it easy. You can do it almost blind, for lack of a better way to describe it. Because I usually like looking at what I'm doing. But this makes this so much easier to get a uniform finish off of it. And just take those little corners off, and I mean just tickle that corner just that little bit, because you still have a bit of a sharp corner there where the two radiuses meet that you're forming by the sanding block. But just knock that off, and that'll make that radius conform all the way around that corner. All right, we have a nice product there. That's 80 grit paper, 80 grit belt on this one. Now I'm going to finish it off with the 120. And as a matter of fact, I thought I didn't have any finish to put on the bottom of these. I do. I have some stain that matches this color, I believe. And I'm going to put it on the bottom to reseal this bottom, because it is really an important detail to make sure the moisture doesn't get into the door in any spot. So I got some other areas that I need to touch up. So I'm going to break that out and touch this in with that stain. All right, I got my stain here. And this acts as a sealer also. Usually they say 2 coats, and they say that's being one of the suppliers that I use for some of my finishes, as in like, I'll say like mini wax or other stain product, Verithane, that they allow that sealer coat, the first coat of the stain, to be used or considered as a first coat of finish. So right now I have a raw door edge, and I'd be more than glad to be able to coat this in with a product that'll help seal that up. Clear coat would have worked, but this will work as well. But again, the trick is to run it up on the edge that can be seen. Make sure it gets up to the edge. There you go. It's looking good. A little bit more down here before I flip it over. Okay, I'm going to give it the big heave-ho. Nature's best wiping cloth. Cleanable, reusable. All right. It shouldn't take no time for that to dry. All right, with the staining done, I'm going to go ahead, while the stain is drying, I'm going to go ahead and mount the top carriers on this door. One that I'm going to have to pull from that door over there that I showed you at the beginning of the video, and the other one here in the package that's still right here. And those are going to get mounted on the center of the doors, making sure that the flip lever that holds the door in place, this right here, because that's going to lock those carriages in place like this. This roller here is something you won't be able to see once it's done. That engages into this right here and locks in, and then that lever keeps that from coming back out again. So it becomes like one. And you want them to be on the same side of the door. I choose to put them on the inside of the bathroom so that in order to access these, you have to pull down one of the head trim pieces to get access to them. Just the filler only, not the wall trim. And that way you can get access to remove this door even with the door finished off in place when it's sized proper. So anyway, that's the ins and outs of installing these. There's another trick or two, and I'll try to get that explained as I go along. I'm going to start with the first roller, with the first screw for the roller at 1.5 inches in. I'm going to mark the center, and that's going to be 11/16. 1 3/8 door, 11/16, and I'm going to pilot that hole, just those holes for now. Now when sizing drill bits, depending on what kind of wood you go into, you want the screw that holds the mounting bracket to the top of the door to be slightly less than the shank of the screw. And you want to be able to see the screw threads beyond the screwdriver bit. Let me get that right. Either that or that. And I usually get it a little bit smaller, which is what this is actually the same size as the shank. So I'm going to step down because this is going into the oak itself. That's the size of bit that I would need, just the thread size, not the or just the shank size, so the threads only engage the wood. Since this is a softer wood material that's an infill at the top, I can go with a slightly smaller bit. So I'm going to step down to the next one, and now I can see the shank partially around the screw threads also. So that's the size of screw that I'm going with. And that's got good depth to it. That told me how thick the head filler is, which the screws will get good grip in that. So that's going to have no issue staying in place. Now these heads also for these screws are number 3 Phillips. You want to make sure you get your size of your screws gauged right for your driver tip. Don't use a number 2 for a number 3. It'll call what's camming out. It won't grab and it'll spin and it'll damage the head to where it won't drive in the way it should be. So size your drivers properly. I'll show you the difference here. Here's a number 3 driver tip, and that's how well it'll fit the screw tip. You can actually hold it to one degree or another because it's a well-fitting, properly judged size for that screw. Here's a number 2 tip, and it has a lot of, again, I think I just made it obvious right there. It has a lot of slop in there. It will not hold the screw the way it should, because this is a non-magnetized tip. It's only magnetized when it's in a holder. But yet, the proper size that it is, it will allow it to stay because it's properly fitting. Again, non-magnetized, it would just simply fall right off. Besides, it will engage the screw and run it in the way it needs to. Okay, now this door is going to come out of the pocket in that direction, so I need the clips that hold these in place on the bottom half. I just want to get that snug so I can still move it. Because I want to move it down towards dead center. of the door. Now, instead of drilling the other hole right away, holding it up, now I got a dead accurate spot on where to drill that other hole. I'm going to get the other clip and mount it here so I can get both of those set up the right way. And you know, bottom line, it's always good to get these centered up all the way through if it's absolutely possible, and I would strive for that. But really the bottom line is, where the center really needs to be, where it's important at, is right there where that pivot is. This can be kicked that way, this can be kicked that way. As long as that is what's really in the center, that's the most important thing. Same thing with both of them. That way when it comes out the pocket, you won't see it move from one side of the opening to the other, as each roller has its own different spot in the top of the door. But I'll drill that pilot here. Now I'll get down on its level and start getting anal on how this is going to wind up finishing off, so I can get that dead in that spot where I need it to be at. It's actually pretty good right there. And I still got to set the bumper on the back, but I got to gauge this off the back of the door. They made the pocket extra deep, and I've already checked it out. I need to add about 1/4 of an inch to the back edge of this door to then add the bumper to it. That way it'll make the door's overall thickness that it needs to be to come even with the face of the finished jamb. That's the main thing. Having it stop within the face of the finished jamb so it goes back properly into the opening. I just measured the depth again, and with the bumper I need almost an inch of material, including the thickness of the bumper. And the bumper is actually 3/8. I had mentioned before it was 1/2 inch, but it's really 3/8. So I'm going to need at least 3/4 of an inch, 11/16. I'm going to go with 11/16 on the material. And there's going to be one more criteria I need to check, if those jambs are plumb. So I'm going to cut up some 11/16 material after I check those jambs, and I'll adjust it if those jambs are not plumb to allow for some shim space also. It just so happens that modern trim nowadays is now 11/16 instead of 3/4. So I'm going to go ahead and measure up to the center of the door and put this block in that center spot, which is 40 inches. Shy now of 40, but still the block is plenty long for what ails us. I'm going to flip that around. And pin this to the door like nobody's business. Good. And now I can set this in place. And I have 31 inches as my desired depth of the door. And I got a good strong, almost 31 1/16. I might just go, I'm going to change it that little bit. I can't, I nailed it in place. I'll just have a little shimming behind it then. Sorry about my wishy-washiness, but yeah, things change and then things change. All right, so time to go ahead and take it to the opening. When setting a pre-finished door, especially one that's got some weight to it, like this one right here, it's good to have some self-help to hold this thing up in place while you're putting the, engaging the carriages, the rollers, at the top of the door where they got to fit in those slots like I showed you beforehand. Having a thin tool, thin bladed tool, I've used things like this. I've used nail sets that can reach up in that space and push that roller into that slot. So have that handy. Spacers, I figured about 5/8 of an inch up off the floor. These are 11/16. When I set the door in there, I should be at nearly the right height, maybe even too tall, we'll see. to get this door in place. So once I get the other roller, I'm going to move this door over to the opening and get it set up. The last thing I want to show you about the doors is that when you look at the rollers, they have about 1/4 of an inch of adjustment to still raise this up if that's the way you need to. They also have almost 1/4 of an inch to go down too, should it need to. I said one thing, there's actually two. The rollers are positioning in the track. They recommend that you have 2 on one side, on one track. You put one in on one direction like that, and then the other one goes in so that weight is balanced equally. So you'll have the weight of one door on one side with 2 in one, and then the other side of the door will be 2 in one as well. This side's already got the 2 on the away side, so I'm going to take this and put the 2 wheels on this side, the near side. And so now I have them oriented properly. I want to get them roughly where they go. Also, they're going to feed into the slots from this direction, so I want them to favor that side of the door when I put it in place, so that I don't have to rearrange the door again once it's in. Anyway, you'll see. I'm going to put one block in the center, so I can rock the door on the one block and get one side to raise or lower as I need to feed it onto the track, onto the rollers. And now I want to be on this side of the equation. And it's on the block, but I got to feed it into the hole. Actually, I can't put it on the block right yet. Okay. Now right now, this is on the wrong side. No, it's on the right side of the track. But the clips is on the other side of the door like I'm hoping. So if any kind of time that the trim needs to be disturbed, it's disturbing on the side of the room that you don't see all the time. But I'm going to rotate this door up and slide this track in, slide this roller in, and get that to just like that. That side's hanging on the roller now. Now I can push this door over at the bottom. See, I can push this over, and by that action, it'll lift up that side. So what I'm going to do is, I'm probably going to need my pry bar. We'll see how this goes. But I'm still going to need my thin thing here to get that into the track. And I'm going to need a pry bar. Let me see if this will go over the hole. Nope. I'm going to do another trick. I'm going to open this up a little bit, push it away at the bottom. And I like to get it lower, but I got this in at the gap of the door, so when I pull it over, it'll rock the top over extra far, so I can now get it in at the top. So I'll just get that started here. And now it's in the other roller, thanks to that little block that I put at the bottom. And that's going to finish out perfectly like I'm hoping. 3/4 inch jamb here, 1/4 inch bury on this side. That's exactly what I was hoping for. Typically, the rollers are already set so that when you mount them to the top of the door, mount them to the plate, set them in their track, the door will automatically be level. It doesn't mean it's going to be, but it's always good to check once you get them hanging on the rollers. And the because it's a pre-finished door, I have to be careful how I move this back and forth out of the opening. But the kit comes with this little wrench. And remember that 1/4 inch gap that I showed you at the top, at the rollers? Well, this is that wrench that fits on that nut bolt. And that's how you adjust the doors to plumb. So now adjust the doors to plumb. So that way I can use this as a straight edge to set my jambs with, both this side and that side. No other levels needed. Just get it level, straight with the door. Automatically built in, piece of cake. I want to lower the door rather than raise it. And it's not going to take a lot because it wasn't that far out. And one more turn, just like I did. Okay, I'll take a little bit on this one also. Here you go. There we are. Perfectly level, perfect straight edge to work to. Knowing what I was going to work with, I already pre-cut some of the stuff when I was doing the trim inside this house. So now it's just a matter of breaking that material. I've already ripped down to the right size and put it in place. Look at that, just like it was made for it. I'm going to tack it and then see where it needs to be shimmed. It's always going to need shims. It's just what nature of the beast. But I don't want to load it up, you know? Just enough to hold it in place. And already I see that the bottom half is good, but the top half needs to be shimmed about 1/8 of an inch. So I can nail a lot of this in already. And always check. You fasten something, you check it. You nail something, you move something, you screw something, you check it. Yep, just that 1/8 of an inch at the top. And before I go too far, I'm going to shim it so it stays square at the top, because ideally I would like to be able to cut. This is what's called a split jamb for the pocket door. That the length of this jamb head filler and this head filler will be the same length. And starting with being square is a good way to start getting those numbers the same. And the best reference point is this. And so now I gotta let the inside catch up just a little. That's beginning to look really good. Got some of my zeros. You can't even buy shims that go down to nothing at the point. It's like, well, I make them myself. Actually, that's a little bit bigger gap. I value my zeros, so whenever I can get by with a thicker shim, I will, believe me. But it's got to be a nice solid hit all the way across. Doesn't sound like any reverb on that, but I haven't nailed it yet either. Just the recoil of it off the. Actually, I've got a little bit of a gap showing down there at the bottom. Maybe I got it too tight at the top. check it for square again. And that's pretty sweet. And nail it where the shims are. If you can get two in, that's good, because then when you're cutting it, it won't pivot on the one nail, giving you trouble when you cut these off. And that should have that done, but always leave your shims in until you're ready to trim out, because all this stuff, for whatever reason, I've always had to come back and adjust shims that I've had in place. I've had to add shims. I don't know why, it just goes that way, so don't cut off your shims until it's done, ready to trim. Casing, I'm sorry. We are trimming the door. It's just adding the casing is what I'm meaning to say. Terminology is everything. There could be mass confusion and hysteria if it isn't understood right. Last thing I should have done before I started, because I might have to take out the door one more time, and that is to mimic what the jamb is going to do. I'm going to move this over here. Then I'll take something that's got a nice clean square edge on it, and I'm going to mimic where the jamb is going to go in at the head, the split jamb, and hold that in place and just keep it away from the door just a little. I got a little hairline gap between the door, and I just want to make sure that that door stays the same dimension away from that while it's passing through the opening. And it is, it's still got that hairline gap there. So that way I know I can cut my door jambs the same thickness all the way through. Not that tapering it would help it any, it's just that I might have to change the sizes of it. And this ensures that I can keep at least that uniformity in my head pieces. That begins that. And in turn, same thing, the side pieces here will also be uniform, and I won't have to adjust anything for that, creating a bigger gap because the door travels kind of sideways because they weren't put in the dead center at the top of the door, because then if they're not dead center, then the door will move to one side of the opening or the other as it travels out of its opening. Now to determine my jamb size. Right now I'm looking at 2 3/4. Two and 5, get rid of this. All this fuzz on this drywall from them cutting it and then getting painted just like really throws off numbers. I got 2 3/4, so I'm gonna go for 2 5/8 jamb on that side. And I'm gonna close the door and again confirm, because I actually have a jamb to measure to over here. And we're slightly different over there. Again, I'm going to close the door and find out. Two 5/8 will work over there. Because the other side said it needed to be 2 3/4. Not a big difference to look at, but the track I seen was off center of the wall a little bit. And again, not a big deal. 1/8 of an inch is really nothing to cry about, but it's just good to know if you're trying to get uniformity in your gaps around the door, so that you're not looking at the door favoring a gap on one side or the other. Two 3/4 on the inside of the bathroom, 2 5/8 on the outside of the bathroom. Those are my numbers that I'm working with. And I'm going to cut this jamb and set it first on this side, so that way I'm cutting the head pieces between the jambs, most important, because I've come back and had to do work on doors after the fact, other people's doors, and they would set the head piece first, and you can't pull it because it's over top of the other jambs to release the hardware. So I always do the jamb sides first, jamb head last, to make that piece removable, just the head piece, so I can unlock those clips and get that door to drop out. With the clearance off the floor and only 1/4 of an inch bury at the head, I got about 5/8 of an inch swing over top of the floor, as it's called, and 1/4 inch bury at the head. Once those are off those clips, that door will drop down 5/8 to get out from that 1/4 inch bury, and then that'll allow that door to come on out of its opening when it needs to be done, should it need to be done. You just never know. I mean, things happen. I'm working on the split jambs now for the pocket door. I had to add some other stuff in there. I'll get to showing you that here in a little bit. But I've already got this 2 5/8 jamb dripped down, getting ready to do the 2 3/4. And I always make a nick, test cut, a nick in it, check it to make sure it's the number that I want. One thing I wanted to show you is that cut edge, really hard corners, doesn't take paint well, and it just doesn't come off right in my mind. So I give it just the lightest sanding just to break that corner, just a little, just so that hard edge is going. It just feels really good when you run your fingers over top of it. That's the way I like treating my cut edges. So, and if it was a showing edge that shows like the Reveal, I'll sand that down to where there's no saw marks. But this saw, I got a planer blade on it right now, so it's really turning out sweet. But this is going to be at the top of the door, and the door is going to cover up this whole face, so I don't have to tend to the face itself. I just want to make sure that edge is nice and pretty. Same thing with the side jambs. That door is going to come out dead flush with this here jamb, so you'll never really have any reason to see that cut edge. But again, breaking that corner, just getting that hard corner off of it and make that feel good to the fingers. Again, it paints well, it shows well, and anyway, just a little touch I always like giving. When setting pocket doors in a 2x6 wall and they're framed with 2x4s flat, which is what I prefer to do, and with what my techniques are, my details that I like providing on my finished openings, I don't do what the typical install is, what they recommend on I don't do what they recommend on the instructions of this particular hardware. They being the supplier, wants these guides to fit on the outside of the jamb. This will be at the bottom of the jamb, so when you're looking at it, and you see the bottom of the jamb at the floor, you'll see that guide. And that seems to be accepted here and there because I've seen it done, and to me it looks as tacky as can be. It's fully adjustable, they're easily removed, piece of cake, but they look really bad. I've seen where they'll apply the very same pieces at the framing and then cover it up with the jamb to where they are put behind the jamb. And they're adjusted, but if the door does anything over time, which it can do, then you have to pull the jamb to adjust the guides. They're, a one-shot deal. And they're also behind the face edge of the trim to where you have to have the door going into the pocket at least 1/2 of an inch to get it to still engage with the guide, or otherwise it'll fall in front of it, and you won't like it as a homeowner trying to open up a door when it fits in the front of this guide trying to pull the door open. My preference is to make a track and set the door guide in the track. That way it sits flush, it fits where it needs to, and I can still place a hole by one. I take the guide and put it, because I know it's going to be at least at the floor, and it can be higher, it won't be lower, but I'll mark exactly the top of the hole in that, so that when I have the jamb in place and the guide in place, I can put a screw hole right there, pilot one, countersink it a little bit so that the screw, when it goes in, will catch this hole here, and you can still loosen it because it'll have a pinch fit, and still loosen it and raise and lower the guide should things happen over time. So that being said, I've had issues on 2x6 walls where the screw is only going into this material only. It doesn't have anything behind to catch it because of the nature of the way 2x6 walls are framed. My remedy has been this, and that is to show you there at the bottom. You can probably just pick up on it. I added these blocks on either side, of the door set with screws. Once the door was open, I could reach it behind this door and set these in place with screws so they're not going to go anywhere. But this will give me what I need so that when the door goes in, that'll give me what I need to place actually a screw right into this piece of material. Otherwise, I would go into the dead space beside the door and the screw wouldn't hold very good. I've had them spin, strip, and do other things that I didn't like doing. But this will now give me exactly what I need to run this screw into that piece of wood, and it'll hold the way I need it to. So I'm going to go ahead and continue on getting these pieces because I have everything cut, ready to go. I just need to get them installed. And that's really nicely even up there. I'll have to shim some of the other places. But now I can stand my pieces up. Okay, now with the guides in at the bottom and my door situated at the top, I can read my gaps on either side of the door and move something one way or the other to get the gaps consistent beside the door all the way through, rather than just letting the pieces fall where they may. No, not an option. I'll read the gaps, get the doors properly spaced all the way through their length, and shim and nail where necessary. Need some shims there. I'm going to need some shims there. But it's only going to take about 1/8 of an inch. So I'm going to cut a couple of shims and make this work. All right. Got my bottom set, I got my guides in here, and I've got them just a little bit on the tight side. So I'm going to move this jamb over, just tweak that just a least little bit. There we go. Now I got some dangling room there. And once it's moved, you'll always repin it because those two nails have been weakened a little bit. So get another nail in there. And they are straight edging really nice across the face. Let's see, we got that. Yep. So I'm going to pin that. Again, that sounds good. I didn't have to do nothing with the other side. And now just to read the gaps. And the gaps are looking really good. I'm seeing this side's practically perfect here. I just got to get it shimmed, and I got to help this side, the other side on the bathroom side, I got to move it over a little bit to help get past an issue that it has. And that's just a mild little bit of movement to get that to work. So that's easy. I just got to shim, get it nailed, and I can start trimming out the outside. Or I can start trimming out to set the casing in place. What I'm going to do is push it in, find how thick of a shim it needs to be to make it flush up, like that one right there. Put that in. Again, 2 nails so it doesn't move on you while you're cutting it off. Check your business. Always check your business. That's going to take a thicker one also. And that's nice and flush by adding that shim. See, I'm pushing the jamb tight to the framing and taking the shims that I have and finding out which thickness I have, which will make that come out flush with the jamb, and that's this one here. So I'll put that in place, pinch it so it doesn't move, move it over so it has the gap that I'm looking for, and double pin that. Oh. I missed that, so now we have that. And that's looking gorgeous across the face. So I just got to do this in one other spot here. And that's almost not thick enough. Let's see if this one will do it. And there that is. I don't want them to go in too far because otherwise I'll rub the door and that would be really bad. But the gap is looking really nice. And let's see what this one will do on this side. And that's the right one for this side. And that wants to stay in there all by itself. So that's a good thing. And the nails are set. And just confirm. Looking good. Looking good. Looking nice there. So I just got to get one more set of shims there. And that'll have this jamb in place. And the other side. Good. I have play at the bottom throughout the way. Sometimes I set them too tight for being anal, and that's bit me one time. Now here, oh crap. I subbed one shim in too far and I heard it, and now I got a white knuckle cut it off from the inside of the door jamb with my multi-master without hitting the finished door. Should be no problem to do. It's just a step that I should not have had to have done if I was watching what I was doing. Okay, now I just got to get the rest of it out. Wood to remove wood. Much better. Now I don't hear that noise anymore, except for the rollers doing their job. That's all I could ever hope for. Now, before I go much farther, I don't think I ever clipped the rollers in. I got them hung, obviously. Nope. But now I have them locked in. So now I can put on the head trim with no issue. Closing well. A little tight. I got that hole marked down there, and that goes through there, and that's into that block of wood. and just the smallest countersink for that screw head. And you can size it by simply reversing the screw, as in putting the head up to it, and compare it. That one looks like it needs to go just a little bit more, and this one needs to go a lot more. Now those should flush up very nicely. And I'm going to pick it up just a little. There you go, just a little. There, just a little bit of play in there. And I'm going to set that other screw. I felt that tap into that other piece really good, so it's got a good strong hold, and this door is done. Now that completes this door install. The rest of it is just mounting the hardware, but the actual install itself is done. Hardware is a typical deal you'll see on some of my other videos. This is a particular one that actually is a nice mortised inset, and it will take a mortised in latch as well. And I'll move on with that, but this video is done for what its purpose is intended. So now it's just a matter of casing it out, just like any other door or window is cased out. All the preliminaries are done. That's particular to a pocket door install. So please like and subscribe. That would really tickle me. I try to hopefully explain things that where people can learn something by what they see here, and I explain it hopefully well enough to really be able to pick up on what I'm putting down, as the old expression goes. Anyway, again, please like and subscribe if you see what I'm doing here. Appreciate it, guys. Till later. Bye-bye.